Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, why do we spend our lives trying to fix a world that refuses to stay fixed? Modern research shows that even when people achieve their goals, more money, more comfort, more security, the sense of happiness often fades within 3 months. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, the mind's endless chase for something better, only to find itself back at the start. But over 2,500 years ago, the Buddhist saw through this illusion. He taught that the world is not a problem to be solved, but a mirror reflecting the state of our own minds. The world is afflicted by suffering because the mind is afflicted by ignorance. The Dhammapada. When you believe that peace comes only when the world is perfect, you've already begun to suffer. The harder you grip life, the more it slips through your fingers. Ram Dass, a modern spiritual teacher, once echoed this ancient truth in simple words. The quieter you become, the more you can hear. This video isn't about teaching you how to fix the world. It's about helping you see it differently, so you can finally lay down the burden of control and discover the peace that was waiting right where you are. Stay with me. This could change more than your day. It could change your life. When the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree more than 2,000 years ago, he wasn't seeking to change the world. He wasn't trying to end wars, repair empires, or rewrite the laws of nature. He was looking deeply into the nature of suffering and the root of peace. And what he discovered was both profound and disarmingly simple. The world outside is not the source of your suffering. It is your mind that creates the world you see. You and I, like so many, we're taught to believe that happiness is hidden somewhere out there. In the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect body, the perfect version of ourselves. But the more we chase these images, the more distant they become. And the world, with all its storms and imperfections, refuses to fall into place. So we try harder. We struggle more. We rearrange our lives like chess pieces, moving people, situations, even emotions, hoping one day the game will finally feel complete. But here's the quiet truth that both ancient wisdom and modern psychology whisper to us. Nothing out there can give you the peace you seek. Ram Dass captured this essence perfectly when he said, "Treat everyone you meet like God in drag." It's not the world that must change for you to find peace. It's the way you see the world and the way you see yourself. This shift, so simple yet so transformative, has been the heart of Buddhist wisdom for centuries. The world is impermanent, unpredictable, and out of your control. But your mind, your heart, that's where true change begins. This video is not a guide for fixing the world. It's an invitation to lay down your tools, step off the battlefield of self-improvement, and meet life just as it is. And when you begin to see with clear eyes, when you stop trying to fix, you might just discover the peace you've been searching for was never missing. It was only waiting. So stay with me. Let's walk gently into this ancient, liberating truth together. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a quiet but powerful observation. The world does not cause suffering. Attachment to how the world should be causes suffering. This simple statement cuts through centuries of human struggle, conflict, and longing. When the Buddha first spoke of the Four Noble Truths, he did not describe a world in need of fixing. He described a mind in need of understanding. The first noble truth, dukkha, is often mistranslated as suffering, but its deeper meaning is closer to unsatisfactoriness or restlessness. The nature of life, the Buddha taught, is that everything changes and nothing outside can offer permanent satisfaction. From the moment we are born, we seek. We seek comfort, security, love, success, recognition, happiness. And at first, the world seems to offer these things, but always temporarily. A new house loses its charm. A new relationship softens into routine. A dream job turns into daily stress. And so the cycle continues, endlessly. We try to fix the outer world to match the inner longing. But the more we fix, the more new cracks appear. The Buddha called this cycle samsara, the endless wandering. Like a traveler chasing a mirage, We pour our energy into controlling life, believing that if we arrange all the pieces just right, we will finally be at peace. But life resists our control because it was never designed to obey personal expectations. The second noble truth explains this clearly. Attachment, craving, is the root of suffering. When we say, if only this person loved me more, or if only my work was easier, or if only the world was less chaotic, we are bargaining with reality. And reality does not bargain. What the Buddha offered was not a formula for fixing the world, but a path for transforming perception. The world outside mirrors the state of your mind. When the mind is agitated, the world appears hostile. When the mind is clear, the world becomes compassionate. This is the heart of the third and fourth noble truths. There is an end to suffering, and the path lies inward. The Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, is not a recipe to change external reality. It is a guide for purifying perception. When your mind becomes free from greed, hatred, and delusion, the world no longer needs to bend to your will for you to feel at peace. The same world, the same people, the same chaos, but the heart experiences it differently. This shift is also beautifully echoed in the words of Ram Dass. We're all just walking each other home. Home is not a place outside, but a state of being inside. When you release the need to control, the world softens. When you release the belief that happiness lives in the future, the present moment becomes enough. And yet, the modern world teaches us the opposite. Social media tells you to hustle for a better life. Advertisements tell you happiness is one purchase away. Even self-help books, sometimes, offer endless to-do lists for becoming better. But the Buddha and Ram Dass both remind us, you don't need to improve the world to find peace. You only need to meet the world, fully present, fully aware. In Buddhist psychology, this is known as equanimity, upekkha. It's not indifference, but a calm acceptance of life's changing nature. When you stop resisting what is, you stop suffering over what is not. When you stop trying to fix the world, you can begin to care for it, from a place of compassion, not control. This shift, from resistance to acceptance, from control to clarity, is the quiet revolution of spiritual life. And as you practice this, you might begin to notice, the world hasn't changed, but you have. And when you change, the world reflects that back to you, like a still pond returning the moon's perfect image. So the next time you feel the world must be fixed, pause, breathe, and ask, is it the world that needs fixing, or is it my way of seeing that needs softening? In that moment, you begin the journey from the restless mind to the peaceful heart. And as the Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. In a quiet, mist-covered village at the foot of Kyoto's ancient hills, there lived a humble gardener named Haruki. His life, outwardly simple, followed the unbroken rhythm of nature. Morning light would awaken him, the wind would accompany his labor, and the stars would cradle him to sleep. For 50 years, Haruki tended to the same garden that his grandfather once cultivated, a modest plot rich with wildflowers, bonsai pines, and delicate cherry blossoms that painted the air pink every spring. But beyond the serene surface of his daily life, Haruki carried a heavy heart. He watched the world beyond his garden through the thin glass of his window, a world filled with news of wars, political corruption, environmental ruin, and endless human suffering. The deeper he looked, the more broken the world seemed. He believed, as many of us do, that only if the world could be fixed, if people would act more kindly, if the powerful could become just if society could wake up, then finally peace could be achieved. Haruki tried, in his own quiet way, to make things better. He donated to charities, mediated disputes among neighbors, and gave food to the hungry. But each act of kindness felt like a single match flickering against the endless dark. Over time, this left him feeling disillusioned, even bitter. One winter evening, As snowflakes drifted silently from the heavens, Haruki sat on the worn tatama mat of his wooden home, sipping a cold cup of tea. The wind rattled the window panes. His mind, restless, wandered through images of the world's troubles, compiling an unending list of wrongs to be righted. That night, an old friend arrived. Masaru, a monk from the nearby Zen temple, had known Haruki since childhood. Masaru had spent decades in quiet contemplation, studying the nature of suffering and the mind. The moment he stepped into Haruki's home, he noticed the weight hanging from his friend's tired eyes. "You look heavy, old friend," Masaru said softly, kneeling beside him. "Why do you carry such sorrow?" Haruki sighed, placing his teacup on the table. "The world is breaking, Masaru. People are blind, greedy, selfish. I try to help, but nothing seems to change. Every day, I see more pain, more cruelty, more injustice. It feels hopeless." Masaru listened in silence, nodding slowly, and then began to speak, not as a monk, but as a companion who understood human suffering deeply. "Let me tell you a story," Masaru said. "There was once a man who set out to cross a river, carrying a heavy stone in his arms. He believed the stone would anchor him against the unpredictable current. But as the waters deepened, the weight pulled him under again and again. The man cursed the river for being too wild, too deep, too unfair. But the river was only ever a river. It was the stone that weighed him down." Haruki sat motionless, absorbing the words. The snow continued to fall beyond the window, silent and unbothered by human concerns. "You see," Masaru continued, "the world is the river. It will flow as it always has, with storms and sunshine, with suffering and beauty. You cannot hold the world in your arms and expect it to match your ideas of peace. But you can let go of the stone." That night, long after Masaru left, Haruki lay awake replaying the parable in his mind. He realized that for years he had been gripping the stone of expectation, the stone of control, the stone of blame. Every time the world did not conform to his hopes, it deepened his suffering. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Haruki began to loosen his grip. He did not stop planting flowers or sharing food with the needy, but he no longer attached his peace to the outcome. Whether the world accepted or rejected his kindness, his heart remained still. One morning, Haruki was pruning the withered branches of an old cherry tree when a butterfly landed on one of the remaining blossoms. The flower was fading, its petals frail and translucent, yet the butterfly rested there peacefully, asking nothing of the dying bloom. In that moment, Haruki saw the world in its purest form, ever-changing, imperfect, and utterly complete as it was. His neighbors noticed the change in him. The man who once fretted over every tragedy reported in the newspaper now sat calmly, sipping his tea, tending his garden, smiling at the smallest of things. One day, a young boy from the village, troubled by a quarrel at home, came to visit Haruki. "Why don't you ever seem upset, old man?" the boy asked. "Even when bad things happen." Haruki thought for a moment and replied, "I used to believe the world had to change for me to be at peace. But the world is like the seasons, child. It changes whether I like it or not. Now, I simply watch the seasons and learn to be at peace with myself." The boy didn't fully understand, but he felt the warmth in Haruki's voice, and that was enough. Haruki lived many more years, and as he aged, his connection with the world deepened, not through controlling it, but through releasing his need to fix it. He came to see the world through the lens of what Buddhist teachings call right view, an understanding that suffering comes not from the world, but from the mind's resistance to it. Even as his body grew weak, Haruki's heart grew light. When Masaru visited him on his final spring, the cherry blossoms were in full bloom. "Have you found peace, old friend?" Masaru asked. Haruki smiled, gazing out the window at the delicate petals drifting in the wind. "The world is still the world, Masaru, but I have let go of the stone." Masaru nodded, a soft smile touching the corners of his lips. Haruki's story, though simple, reveals a profound truth echoed throughout Buddhist wisdom. The nature of the world is beyond our control, but the nature of our minds is not. When we stop insisting the world must meet our expectations, when we drop the weight of wanting life to behave, peace arises naturally, like spring after winter. Just as the Buddha taught, attachment is the root of suffering. Haruki had lived this truth, not in theory, but in the soil under his nails, the air he breathed, and the space he held for life to unfold, unforced and unjudged. And that is why the world no longer needed fixing. It only needed to be seen with clear, compassionate eyes. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a vast, open field. Before you lies the world in all its complexity, moments of beauty blooming like wildflowers, and patches of sorrow like dark, heavy clouds. The instinct to reach out, to fix, to mend every broken piece is so deeply human. Yet it is also the very thing that tightens the knots in your heart. Buddhist wisdom whispers gently that peace does not come from rearranging the world, but from rearranging the lens through which we see it. Like Haruki, many of us wander through life trying to control the external world, believing that if we work hard enough, if we think long enough, if we correct the faults around us, happiness will arrive. But the world is not broken in the way we imagine. The world simply is ever-changing, beyond our grasp, indifferent to our desires. When you stand still and watch a river flow, you don't instruct the water where to go. You don't command the wind to change direction. You simply watch. And in this watching, there is an extraordinary peace. The same could be true for the stories unfolding around you. The news headlines, the arguments between friends, the injustice and cruelty that stab at your heart. What if, instead of trying to fix the world, you cultivated the strength to let it be what it is? Not out of apathy, but out of understanding. Not out of defeat, but out of wisdom. You can still act with compassion, still plant seeds of kindness, still reach out a hand to those in need, but without the crushing expectation that your actions must reshape the universe. When you wake in the morning, before the day begins to demand your attention, take a moment to ask yourself, am I trying to fix the world, or am I willing to let it teach me? That single question can turn frustration into curiosity and helplessness into deep listening. The world doesn't need your control. It needs your clear seeing. It needs the spaciousness of your presence. From this stillness, loving action can arise, not driven by fear or frustration, but by genuine connection. And perhaps that is all life ever asks of us. Not to fix the world, but to meet it with open eyes and an open heart. When you allow the world to be your teacher, each moment, no matter how small, transforms into a sacred opportunity. The sound of the rain against your window, the smile of a stranger, the ache of loss, all become gentle invitations to return to the present, where peace has been quietly waiting all along. The Buddha never promised a world without suffering, but he did offer a path to liberation from suffering. That path does not begin by changing the world, but by observing it, understanding it, and softening your grip upon it. Let the world be as it is, and choose to meet it with kindness. In doing so, you might discover that peace has always been one shift of perspective away. There is a profound difference between reacting and responding to the world. Reaction is born from resistance, from the mind's compulsion to immediately judge, fix, or control what it perceives as wrong. Response, however, arises from understanding, from allowing space for the world to be seen as it is, and from choosing to meet it with wisdom and compassion. When you begin to practice this shift, your daily life transforms in subtle, yet extraordinary ways. Consider your morning routine. Perhaps you wake to an alarm, already carrying a burden of mental lists, bills to pay, tasks to finish, conversations to have, news to process. Before your feet even touch the ground, the mind has already declared what needs fixing: your life, your relationships, even the world. But what if before the rush of thoughts you paused? What if you allowed the morning sun to greet you, the silence of the early hours to hold you, and simply notice the miracle of being alive. In this pause, you step out of the cycle of fixing and enter the sanctuary of presence. Haruki, in his quiet garden, lived this way long before he had words for it. The truth is, the world has never been a place free of suffering. The Buddha himself, 2,600 years ago, walked the dusty roads of India and observed sickness, old age, death, and the restlessness of human longing. He did not seek to fix the world, but to understand it, and in understanding, found peace. You are invited to do the same. Every act of letting go is an act of profound self-compassion. When you release your grip on expectations, the world becomes less hostile. You begin to see others not as enemies or obstacles, but as fellow travelers, each struggling under their own invisible burdens. A driver who cuts you off in traffic, a colleague who speaks harshly, a stranger who seems indifferent to your kindness. None of these are personal. Each moment is simply another ripple in the river of life. And like the river, life will flow whether you fight it or flow with it. One of the most practical ways to apply this shift is through conscious observation. When you encounter discomfort, be it anger, frustration, grief, or anxiety, pause and observe the emotion rather than reacting to it. Ask yourself, am I trying to control this moment, or can I allow it to be as it is? The question itself creates space, and in that space, peace can emerge. Another path is to embrace impermanence, the heart of Buddhist teaching. Everything you see, touch, and experience is in a constant state of change. Friends will come and go, seasons will shift, the body will age, and even the most joyful days will pass. When you truly understand impermanence, you stop clinging to outcomes. You begin to savor the present moment for what it is, rather than what you wish it would be. Haruki's transformation did not happen because the world changed. Wars continued, suffering did not disappear, injustice remained. What changed was his relationship to all of it. He stopped trying to carry the stone, and in doing so, found the lightness of being. You too can begin this gentle shift right where you are. The next time you read distressing news, hear a painful story, or witness suffering, allow yourself to feel compassion without collapsing into despair. Know that your heart can hold the world's sorrow without drowning in it. And from this stable ground, your actions, however small, will be rooted in clarity, not fear. Even the act of breathing can become a teacher. When the mind spins with worry about the state of the world, bring your attention to the breath. Each inhale is a reminder that you are alive. Each exhale a surrender to the present moment. The breath does not need to be controlled. It flows naturally, effortlessly, just as life does when you stop forcing it. This is not to say you should withdraw from the world or abandon the pursuit of kindness. On the contrary, compassionate action is the fruit of clear seeing. When your heart is free from the need to control, your service to the world becomes pure, not driven by ego, but by love. Consider the small daily choices: how you speak to your loved ones, how you respond to strangers, how you offer your time, your attention, your presence. When these acts are done without attachment to outcome, they carry a rare and beautiful quality: sincerity without expectation. And that is the essence of the Buddhist path. Compassionate engagement without clinging, love without conditions, presence without control. As the Zen saying goes, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The world outside remains much the same, but the world within becomes spacious, open, and profoundly at peace. So the invitation is this: every time your heart feels the weight of the world's problems, pause. Ask yourself, am I holding the stone? And then, like Haruki, gently loosen your grip. Let the world be as it is, and meet it not with resistance, but with open-hearted awareness. Peace is not something the world gives you. It is something you uncover when you stop demanding that life be different. In this stillness, Wisdom blooms in your actions, however quiet. Ripple outward like a pebble dropped into calm waters. And maybe, just maybe, this is how the world truly changes. Not from being fixed, but from being seen, understood, and loved as it is. As we return to the stillness from which we began, let us breathe gently into this truth. The world may never be exactly as we wish it to be, but our hearts, our vision, our response to it can be transformed. Ram Dass once said, "We're all just walking each other home." And perhaps part of that walk means learning to let go of a need to fix, to control, to demand that life unfold according to our design. Instead, we walk with awareness. We walk with presence. We walk with compassion, not only for others, but for the restless mind within us that longs for order in a world built on change. Buddhism reminds us that suffering is not born solely from the outer world, but from the inner clinging to permanence, to control, to certainty. And yet, within that very insight lies freedom. When we stop trying to bend the world to our expectations, we free ourselves to meet it as it is. Raw, beautiful, chaotic, tender. Haruki's quiet transformation was not about turning away from life, but about turning toward it with wiser eyes. His garden did not cease to bloom. It simply stopped needing to be perfect. His acts of kindness did not vanish. They simply became lighter, flowing without the burden of results. So too, can we live, awake, engaged, and at peace, not by fixing everything around us, but by softening our gaze, loosening our grip, and discovering that even in a world of 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, peace is not elsewhere. It is here, now, in the way we choose to see. Let the world be your teacher. Let impermanence be your guide. Let stillness be your home. And when the winds of change rise, as they always do, may you sit like the old cherry tree in Haruki's garden, rooted in presence, blooming without reason, and free without needing to be free. If these words have touched a quiet place within you, even for just a moment, then the journey has already begun. This space we are creating here is not just about ideas or teachings. It's about building a community of souls who long for clarity, for peace, and for deeper understanding in a world that often feels overwhelming. A place where ancient wisdom still whispers softly to modern hearts. So if you felt the truth in today's reflection, I warmly invite you to subscribe to this channel. Not just as a follower, but as a companion, walking the same winding path toward presence and peace. And when the world feels heavy again, as it surely will, come back here. Let this space remind you, the world may not need fixing, only seeing. Share this video with someone who might need that reminder too. Let's grow this circle of quiet seekers, one heart at a time. Until we meet again, may you walk gently, see clearly, and rest in the boundless peace that has always been yours.